Deputy Awards and Features Editor for Variety, and your host for today's half hour with Raised by Wolves. At this time, please join me in welcoming Aaron Guzikowski, the creator, executive producer, showrunner, and writer of the series, and Raymond McIntyre Jr., the visual effects supervisor. Before we start, let's take a look at a trailer from the show, and then we'll dive right in.
Approaching craft. Please identify. Come on.
I want to start at the beginning with Aaron, because you've created this entire worlds really, with this series. Where did the initial idea sort of come from, and what made you see this as a series as opposed to, say, a film?
It was over the course of many years. I've been assembling, aspects of what became this story. But I think it was when I started thinking about the idea of these two androids raising children on this planet that I'd been thinking about for so long, that I kind of found, ironically through androids, kind of the emotional through line, kind of my way in to this world. And I think in terms of TV over a movie, I think it very much, there's just so many layers to it, so many kind of characters, and there's just so much going on. I think it would just be a very different kind of animal if you turned it into a movie. Not necessarily in a bad way, but I think it would be leaning into different aspects of it. Whereas, I think we're really trying to tell just this grand mythology where we're, populating a planet starting with the very first people to arrive, which are this family, these two androids and their children, and then just building out from there. And, hopefully getting to a point, where we have more or less fully populated, literally we built a world, and, until we have a climate, we have an ending figured out, and it's going to take a while to get there. Hopefully we'll be so lucky as to, to be able to do that. But that's kind of where it all started.
You already have the ending planned out?
Yeah, I did. I think in order to, when I pitched it to the network long ago, I had to give them some idea kind of where it was going. So I have a good, obviously there's, pieces that need to be figured on, but more or less, yeah.
I would ask you to tell us everything right now, but truthfully, I don't want to know. I want to see how it plays out. Raymond, for you, what attracted you to working on this project?
Well, it's not too often that in the visual effects world you get to work on something that has great acting, great story, great directing, and great visual effects, and all those pieces come together in one thing. And that happened here. And so that's a real attraction to, a visual effects person. And then there was so much creativity that I was allowed to put into suggest ideas, looks, and things like that, because, Aaron and Ridley and everybody was so they would say what they were looking for, and then we would collaborate and come up with the best way to, to come up with a look or whatever it might be. And that's really attractive to, with the scenario I just mentioned, and having that ability to be involved in the creative was just a tremendous amount of fun.
Yeah, I should mention that Ridley Scott is an executive producer on the show and directed, I believe, the first 2 episodes. And obviously, there are few people who know more about creating sci-fi worlds than him. When did he come on as a collaborator, and what does he sort of like to work with?
He came on at the very, very beginning. I was talking to Scott Free, in terms of them possibly producing the show, but we hadn't really talked about, directing. I didn't think at the time that Ridley was gonna, it was something that he'd be able to do or want to do. I know he was busy with many a movie and all these sorts of things, but he did read it when it was over there, and he just responded to it. He started storyboarding it right after he finished the script. And really, he's been pretty intimately involved ever since. Even now, as we're working on season 2, I talk to him all the time, and we're, working on all the new designs and, all of the, all the new story elements. And, he's been very, from the very beginning, obviously, into the directing, and then, all through post and the visual effects and the whole way through. He's been so involved, and it's been just such a gift, I think, to be able to work so closely with him and to just to learn from the master. It's been a great experience.
When you were creating the look and the feel of this world, what were sort of those initial conversations like? And I understand that your production designer, Chris Seegers, actually had a fairly modest budget to construct these worlds. Or I don't know if it was modest, but I think it was more modest than it might look considering how beautiful it looks. And he actually built a 360-degree set.
He did. Yeah. So the whole settlement you see in episode 1 or all through the first season is real. They built the barracks, which are, supposed to be made out of this kind of rock, which have been smashed and put back together in this almost kind of medieval sort of dwelling that they created. And there's all of these crop circle type things that are real and huge, and a real giant serpent skeleton. It was all real, which is great. Ridley loves, I think, kind of the traditional approach, and as much, building for real as much as possible to, which I think just helps a lot in terms of giving everything just weight and, giving the actors a real environment to live in. And also you taking advantage of all of the, stuff that you can't really account for. Every day the lighting's different, the clouds are different, all of these things that real life give you that, just really kind of add this whole interesting element to the whole look and feel of the thing. But yeah, I think that the location that Chris and those guys found, and just the versatility of it, and it was really it was a great thing. It worked out quite well.
At what point did you realize you were going to be shooting in South Africa?
Very early on, Ridley had they checked out a few places. I think Iceland was considered, but I think it was going to be the wrong time of year. It would have been too cold there. So they settled on South Africa, which I'd never been to before, but as I'm sure Ray can attest, it's a beautiful place. The topography there and all the natural beauty of the place is incredible, and the crews are great. Everything about it was really quite pleasant.
This is actually fascinating to me because, Raymond, I wasn't aware necessarily that visual effects people went to sets. I'm not as educated as I should be on this, but I imagined you were all in offices working on the tech, but you're very involved from the ground up, aren't you?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, especially like season 1 had, 3,000 visual effects shots, and then another 700 fix-it kind of shots where you remove mics and things like that, just fix-its. And the 3,000 visual effects shots are very creative. And what's required, like now that we're prepping for season 2, is Aaron writes a script, and then we find locations, and now we have to feed back to Aaron what's good about the location, what works with the script, what we can't find and can't make work, and then he will potentially rewrite portions of it to fit what we find, or make the script fit exactly what we can do or achieve well. And then you take all kinds of things into account, creativity, budget, all of those things. So it's a really collaborative and immersive thing in order to put it all together in the beginning, so that when you start shooting, you've answered as many questions as possible.
What are the discussions like, for example, Aaron, when you write something, do you know if it's going to be done practically versus using visual effects, or are those conversations you have to have? And how do you sort of make those decisions?
It's usually a conversation. Occasionally it seems kind of obvious as I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, this is definitely not something we're going to build. But I too am a huge fan of anything we can do in real life. And, I think it just gives Ray so much more to work with. And I think any time you can have just that ingredient of real life, however many percent that is, it definitely enhances all of the stuff that's, 100% fabricated. And if you get enough of it in there, I think it really creates a really convincing stew of visuals. So it's nice.
I mean, the visual effects are so stunning, but what I love is that they really support the story as opposed to sort of just distracting, flashy for flashy's sake. How do you sort of find that balance? What are those discussions like?
If you can do something practically, you should, and then augment what you can't achieve practically. And so, like when I mentioned there was 3,000 visual effects, hopefully, I mean, there's obvious ones, like the serpent and things like that obviously have to be, but hopefully the other 2,900 of them, you didn't even notice on the screen. You didn't know they occurred. And that's kind of our goal, is to make something that is supporting the story and just becomes part of the story, as opposed to the visual effects of the story. And that's definitely our intention, then and coming up in next season.
What's something that people might think was done practically, but was actually a subtle visual effect?
A subtle one? Well, there's some really big ones that I hope, I know the people I've talked to about, interviews and things like that. So the ending of season 10, when the big serpent busts out of the lander and flies off into the distance, I mean, it's obvious that the serpent is visual effects, but there is absolutely nothing real in the entire frame. So the ground, the trees, the leaves, the dust, the lander, everything, in addition to the serpent, is all made in the computer. And so I know the people that have interviewed me, and we've talked about that sequence, no one has caught that. So hopefully that's a scene that everybody just looks at and says, well, that's really, yeah, the serpent's CGI, but everything on that screen is CGI.
Wow. Aaron, I'm just curious, since this all comes from your brain, what is it like when you actually see it all completed? Like, is it still kind of mind-blowing to you?
Oh, there's no way to describe it. It's amazing, I think, because I've been writing these sorts of things for a long time, and then finally, getting this opportunity to get it up on screen, but also getting the opportunity to get it up on screen with all these extremely talented people helping to execute it in a way that, really, it always, you look at it and you're just excited, you're giddy, because usually it's the other way around, where it's like, they're not going to really be able to execute, everything is a little bit less because it's just not possible. But, if you get enough, really imaginative people, coming up with creative solutions for the, whatever the budget might be, the sky's the limit. So, yeah, it's every day is like Christmas on some level.
Because we've seen so many different sci-fi worlds depicted over the years, and this really feels like a fresh, original take. Did you have conversations about certain things you didn't want to do? Like there was a way you didn't want the spaceship to look, or, the settings or the production design overall?
Yeah, well, I think, when Ridley was first kind of imagining some of these things, having, obviously he's, designed a lot of the things that have kind of been the benchmark for, modern sci-fi for the last 30 years or so. So, he's kind of competing with himself on some level. And I think he was just really wanted to approach the ships. He was kind of over the whole idea of, a lot of tubes and a lot of like crazy, gear and stuff. And he wanted to go for really simple, streamlined, really elegant shapes, and just, wanted to evolve this kind of visual language that he had, kind of helped create, way back when. And I think that's what we did. I think it plays really nicely, I think, because it feels kind of real in a sense that you would design something that way. I think, he always wants the design to feel like it has a reason for being. It can't just be like, oh, we built that way because it's cool. It should be like, no, it's supposed to function like this, and then it does that. Just like everything around us on Earth, everything has this utility to it, and that helped us define its kind of reality for us. And I think, Ridley is he loves applying that, when you're imagining a new world, he always says, there's no better designer than God, sort of thing, in terms of like looking around us and trying to find the answers, they're right under our nose, as the case might be. So, but yeah.
I mean, fortunately, Ridley has a tremendous, he's very creative, very artistic, and a tremendous amount of experience. And so over his course of movies, he has scouted and seen a lot of locations, and maybe they didn't work for the movie back then, but he keeps those in his memory bank all of the time. Yeah. And so when we need something, he says, oh, look at this place. And I go look at it, it's like, well, that's perfect. And yeah, I scouted that, 20 years ago or something like that. And he remembers them all. And he gives us this like, oh, look at this place for that idea. So it's really great.
I want to talk about a specific look that I love in the show, which is when Mother turns into her sort of necromancer mode. It's so terrifying and unique. Can you sort of talk about the discussions behind that look and then how you achieved it?
Initially, Ridley had a very clear vision on that. He was thinking about the Atlas statue in front of Rockefeller Center there, that kind of Art Deco sort of style, and really just imagining her. I remember among the first kind of concept drawings were pretty close to, I think, what she ended up looking like at the end. So yeah, and I think it came together fairly quickly. I think the execution of it and making it work on screen, falling to Ray, in terms of there was a ton of just constantly, just fine tuning it, trying to find the sort of the right, sort of look and feel for the whole thing. And, from her weaponry to just the way she flies and, how the whole, the kind of the way her face kind of presents in certain moments. But I mean, and Ray can speak to, it was quite a journey on that, but I think we're all very happy, I think, where we ended up.
What a lot of people probably don't realize is that Amanda was actually on wires and was flown. So anytime you see a transition from Amanda to the Necromancer or the Necromancer to Amanda, then you have to step back and realize that Amanda was actually on wires in the air, landed on the ground, and walked off with the wires on her. Because in order to do the transitions perfectly and seamlessly from either Amanda in the gray suit to the digital Necromancer or vice versa, we had to have them both. And so then the digital version of her was match moved to her exact movements and then transitioned as she walked, and you saw the bronze effect either come on or go off, wrap around. So when you realize that she was actually on a wire in the air, stepped down, walked off, and was, it was the perfect subject for us to then create what we needed.
Wow. And I actually just want to give a shout out to your amazing cast, because I think with the exception of Travis Fimmel, these are a lot of actors I'm not familiar with. Was that sort of intentional in the casting? Were you looking for newer faces?
Yeah, I think I think, a story like this, it's really great, a la like the very first Star Wars movie, where it's just like, oh, I don't know who these people are, and I will only associate them with this story. You know what I mean? With the exception of maybe one person like Alec Guinness or whatever it might be. But everybody else, you're just seeing them for the first time and you're like, these are the people who live in this world. I don't know them from anything else. And they've all, done work outside of the US, and, they're all seasoned actors for sure. And as you can see on screen, they're all incredible. But that was kind of the rationale for that.
I like that in this metaphor, Travis Fimmel is Alec Guinness.
Exactly. There's very few metaphors that I guess that would be the case, but yeah. Not to say that Travis is not a great actor.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Yes,
no.
but a very different personality.
Yeah.
For sure. Absolutely.
So for each of you, what ended up being the biggest challenge in season one? Was there a specific moment or a scene? And Aaron, for you, it can be as a writer, as a director, and then a specific visual effect that for you proved to be the most challenging for Raymond.
Well, I think that the birth was fairly challenging, all the little babies and all of that. I think Ray can speak to that, but there were actual animatronic babies that we had and a whole bunch of traditional stuff. And, Ray had to, kind of breathe some more life into those babies. And, just getting that whole sequence to work was fairly challenging. But that, there were quite a few, but that for some reason that stuck out in my head.
I think for me, it wasn't, there was lots of difficult shots and things like that, but it was just the sheer need to be creative and come up with something unique and cool, because that's really what Ridley and Aaron wanted. They like Ridley would constantly say, "Oh, I've seen that before. Show me something else. Show me something I haven't seen before." And so that's the goal. And as Aaron said, when you have several creative people in a room and you just start talking through, well, it could be this and it could be that. And we came up with a lot of things. So it's just the ability and the desire and the need to be creative and come up with something not too over the top, not about the visual effects, but unique and looks great. And there was, thousands of those opportunities in this first season to do that. So that was probably the best part, and the hardest part for me was just putting in that creative mindset.
What's it like when, you think you've come up with something new and someone says, "Oh, I've seen that before." Is that, tough, or does it just inspire you to move on?
Yeah, I think that's just working in Hollywood. Yeah, I think everything's been done. It's all about like how long someone's memory is, because everything has been done somewhere, somehow. So you kind of have to, I think at the end of the day, it's about, the sum of its parts. And if the sum of its parts feels different, then you've succeeded. But the parts themselves, occasionally, there will always be a percentile in there that we've seen before. Because otherwise, I think sometimes too, you need some degree of familiarity. Otherwise, people kind of tune out. But I think it's always trying to find that balance. But we definitely tried to push it, really trying to, all of us being fans too of the genre and having seen all of these films thousands of times, really wanting to find, new ways to get to those places.
I agree. I think it's being unique, but you said it in the beginning, it's not about the visual effects. The visual effects are in support to a story. And that's the way to look at it, first off. And then, no, I don't take any offense to if we've already, the better idea will come out. And that's kind of the way I look at it. I don't take offense if you like this design or that design, whether it's mine or anyone else's. That's not the key. The key is to come up with something that we all agree is the right thing, or will look good, or will be an awesome result. And so no offense taken when somebody doesn't like whatever it is. It's just we carry on, and this is what we do.
Remember, he said that next time. And you're already at work at season 2. I cannot wait. Is there anything you can tell us that we can expect from the upcoming season?
Obviously, there's a new inhabitant on the planet, this giant serpent that mother's 7th child. We have these new arrivals. We see some hint of it at the end of season 1, this new ship, only this time it is the atheists who have arrived on the planet. And like Earth, we're on a different side of the planet. And, like Earth, there are different regions that look completely different. So I think a lot of planets you see in sci-fi, it's very kind of mono in terms of the environment. It's usually like one thing. But, the Earth is very varied, and I think trying to use that idea that if you're on the ground and you don't have any tech and you're standing in California, you don't really know that Alaska exists, or you could never really fathom, a lot of the different places that, this planet has to offer. So we're going to a very different environment, which is going to require, in some ways it's like starting all over again, because we have to, it's not the environment of season 1. It is the same planet, and obviously a lot of things will carry over, but there's a lot of brand new, stuff that we've got to figure on. And so, but it's exciting. It's a lot of fun.
And if someone hasn't had a chance to watch Raised by Wolves just yet, what is the one thing that you could say that would make them drop everything and start binging right now?
I would just, that it's Ridley Scott's, science fiction, his newest entry into his science fiction canon. I would say would be, that would definitely get me to watch it. And I think beyond that, I think it's just that we definitely took pains to try and make something different. And, but at the same time, we're trying to tell a big, epic, original story. I think that's another reason too, that there's no book. You can't figure out, there's no way to find out how it's going to end. It's exclusively, tailor-made for the screen to be shown just as it's being shown. So I think, hopefully that would entice somebody to give it a go.
I would say it's some of the best sci-fi that's been on TV in the last 20 years. So, hopefully that'll get everybody.
There you go.
I think I would just show them that trailer of people exploding because it's pretty cool.
That's very effective. Absolutely.
It is. Well, I want to thank our friends at HBO Max and our speakers for talking with us today. And to all of you who are watching us from your couch or your office or wherever right now, thank you so much for joining us as well.